World live every Sunday 9 to 11 p.m. GMT. Check out our archive and program stream at windowsontheworld.net.
Good evening everybody, welcome to Windows on the World. Yeah, a few technical problems here today, as usual. This often happens, especially recently, having a lot of trouble getting on air. And the shows during the week have been extremely interesting. I hope you've been tuning into Republic Broadcasting Network at 6 p.m. We've had some great guests on, including Sandy Adams, who's also my guest tonight. I've ventured down to the southwest and in the environs of Glastonbury. So we're both sat here and the weather isn't very good. And we've got the COVID blues. We have got the COVID blues today. And it's the first time ever since the beneficial crisis that I've actually felt a bit despondent about all this, but not despondent about what we're doing, but despondent looking around me. What do you think, Sandy?
Yeah, well, it's the town here is depressing. I've got to say they've closed all the roads off because of the virus. They're saying that, social distancing. We've closed the roads due to social distancing, and of course, as we know, it's all part of the global action plan to close towns off. And our town council have been trying to do it for about 3 or 4 years now, with opposition from traders. And they've just done it without consultation overnight. And literally the day the shops opened up, they closed the roads. And the shopkeepers are struggling. Everyone's struggling. If it's not bad enough being locked down for 3 months, we've now got a ban on cars and everything else coming down the high street. So, it's depressing. It's taken the vibe out of the town completely. And you know what it's like, Mark. You just walk through and it's dead. It's dead, like most pedestrianised towns are.
Well, exactly. This is what happened in Waltham Forest, and that's why I moved out, because we are really up to speed on this stuff and we know how it works. The same template is rolled out over and over again, and I keep reiterating this, but I think it's a very important point. Yes, you can hear us fine. That's great, because we're actually coming to you on a different device tonight. As a little side issue, I have to tell you something. I dropped my phone. The Windows Towers broadcasting system is actually a phone usually when we do the Sunday shows. Obviously, I go a bit more upmarket for the midweek. Actually, I don't. It's all the same. We have to keep the technology as simple as possible because we're on the move, folks. We're on the run. This is the post-COVID new normal. And yes, every town in Britain is being pedestrianised on the back of a flu virus. Who would have thought it? Well, it's part of the global action plan. We've only been talking about it for about 10 years. When I left Waltham Forest, they were closing all the roads off and putting large tree planters in the middle of all the roads. And then they were calling all the little roads that weren't big roads rat runs. And they stopped people driving down them. They closed them all off. Transport for London said that 65% of people were in favour, even when there'd been no consultation. And guess what? Now we've got the multifaceted beneficial crisis of COVID-19 to usher in all the things that bring us a dystopian nightmare. And it's happening in Glastonbury as well. They've got little signs up telling you not to go down there. And of course the high street's completely dead. And it's all looking a bit depressing, isn't it, Sandy?
It is. It's looking very depressing. They've closed off the neighbouring town street as well. It's called Street, the neighbouring town, and they've closed all the roads there due to COVID-19 social distancing. And this is. I mean, it's just been done without any idea of how it's going to affect. Well, they know how it's going to affect the town. I think it's a concerted effort to actually further impoverish business owners, because if we're not impoverished now, we will be when that's there for a few months, and it's never going to go back. We know that. And I'm doing a rally. I will advertise it later on the shows. On the 12th of July, I'm doing a rally against this closure. and it's going to be in Thornbury. I'll give you more details about it. But there's people all over the country furious about these road closures in towns, and I've been asked to speak, and I will give you all the details of that when I know a little bit more about it. But if your town has been closed, then do ping me a Facebook message or something. Sandy Adams, I'm on Facebook, and maybe we can get something going to stop this ridiculous, just complete shutdown of our town centres under a flu virus, basically. I mean, a seasonal flu. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's actually more than that. It's quite sinister what's going on, because there've been so many things that have been brought in on the back of this. They've covered every angle, and this is social engineering on a massive scale. On my daily show rather, on RBN, I brought up this quote from, it's called a document called Quiet Weapons for Silent Wars, and it was allegedly found in an IBM copier in the late 80s, I think, but it was featured in the first part of Bill Cooper's book, and it's all about how people can be engineered. And there's a quote at the beginning, and it says, what does it say? Yeah, it says, yes, those who do not use their intelligence are animals, beasts of burden, and stakes on the table by choice and consent. And that is very true, because most of this stuff is done with consent. All right, they may well be cheating and lying to get your consent, or they may be actually deceiving the public into believing that they've even given consent. But the main issue here is that it appears that people have agreed, and you know what that's called, don't you? It's called consensus. And as I said earlier, in Waltham Forest they said 65% of people had already agreed there'd been no public consultation whatsoever. 5 or 6 years later, those people have dwindled down to a very small group who still think that this is a local council issue, which is why they're having no effect whatsoever, and which is why Clyde Lokes, the useful idiot who implemented it there, the change agent, has now gone to Oxford to rebrand it all as livability, telling the public what they want. So the public are being told what they want, and most of the time they're accepting it because they do not have the coordinates to understand where this is coming from. They think we have government. No, we have governance. Two very different things. And this is an interesting issue as well with these smaller councils, isn't it? Like this parish council here, because they virtue signalled about this 5G, as lots of these little councils did, and of course they've got no power to stop it. It was already in place, so they were lying to you basically. And the thing about this beneficial crisis is that what may happen now is these parish councils may be abolished altogether. Isn't that right, Sandy?
Well, yes. I mean, there was an article, I can't remember where I saw it now, about how parish councils are actually going bankrupt, and not parish council, town councils are going bankrupt now, and it's furthering the regionalisation, and I think they're deliberately being bankrupted. They're saying that due to COVID-19, we haven't got any money now, and it's a regionalisation which has been planned for a long time to actually get the electorate further away from the decision making, and that I believe is what's going to happen. I don't understand how COVID-19 could have bankrupted town councils, because at the end of the day, they're still getting their council tax and all that stuff. So I'm not sure where that's coming from, but they're saying that they've been bankrupted, and they may well have been. But it's really bankrupting everything for a reason.
Well, yeah, of course it is. I mean, the thing is about it, it's so multi-layered, this, and once you look into it, it's all been factored in. Like we've been talking about this on the World Economic Forum website. Basically, it's just hundreds and hundreds of articles, thousands of articles, which really back up what they want to do. So in other words, what they're doing is more or less telling you what's going to happen. And it's all on there on the World Economic Forum Strategic Intelligence website. We have talked quite a lot about this over the last few weeks, but I would suggest that people do look at that. Now, what's interesting, and possibly a solution that I was going to bring up tonight, is the way that all this is rolled out in a very template kind of way. template for kind of fashion, because what tends to happen is these people are trained into sustainable development, they're trained into the climate change agenda, they're trained into the word salad of resilience, sustainability, diversity and all the rest of it, and they have very limited ways of putting this across. And once you spot it, you can never unsee it actually, because it's so blatantly obvious. And it has been noted that when these sort of fake activism sites, that this is what I wanted to bring up, these fake activism sites, of which there are many, when the lies are exposed, these globalist backed organisations and their websites actually disappear altogether. Now this is very interesting, because years ago I got kind of libelled really on a website, and I found out who it was, and it was people I actually knew, and they worked privately, but also it appears for some kind of government intelligence. And it doesn't matter whether it's them doing it or whether it's another website, because recently we had this website go down, which was quite interesting, and it coincided with us reporting on it. And it was to do with the 5G issue. Now what happens is that these organisations like the Club of Rome, they want to control the narrative. So what they will do is they will set up a 5G activist groups, and then of course they'll steer it into sustainable development. So they use an issue that they think is popular to get the people on board for the issue that they want to actually push. And this is a very transparent way of doing things. But yeah, over the years the templates grow more predictable and they don't change at all. Is this because these people are stupid or just lazy? Well, in an easy to control hierarchical structure, the administrators are not too clever. Nothing can be too complicated if it is to be rolled out globally. Very important point. The vocabulary of sustainable development is extremely restricted. When you hear resilient, sustainable, vibrant, diverse in the same speeches, leaflets and local plans, it's all kind of the same thing. So it's not surprising to me that they're all the same, but it is surprising that the public still don't have a clue what these words actually mean, because the meanings of the limited vocabulary can mean everything and nothing. In fact, Enrico Giovanni, who implements sustainable development in Italy, said so himself at the Global Governance Summit in Dubai 2019. He said, what does sustainable development mean? Everything and nothing. When something means everything and nothing, it can mean everything. And that is the point, that these words that do not adequately describe anything, but they adequately describe the system and the template that's been put into place. When they keep doing the same thing over and over again, it gets easier to spot. Now, I've talked about this over the last few weeks, because the whole system, whether it's COVID-19, climate change or Black Lives Matter, is at the core, they're all the same. At the core, they're all the same. This is because it all has the same ultimate goal and one agenda. Now, this is a multipolar and multifaceted agenda, but it's basically driving along these plans of sustainable development. The climate change issue and COVID-19 has come a part of that, because from the early sort of part of this century, the globalists and people like the Tavistock Institute and all the stuff we've reported on over the years, they've always said that pandemics will be used to control people and to bring in global governance. They've always said this. Now, nothing has speeded up the global action plan like COVID-19, but there was this website a while ago, and there's an article on windowsontheworld.net, and it's called 5G Debate Hijacked by Globalists, and it was about this website worldshift.earth, which was connected to the Club of Rome through the Club of Budapest through Irving Laszlo, who was the author, or one of the authors of the First Global Revolution.
That's right.
So this is really interesting. So these globalists, they set up these templates, and they're so easy to spot that if you get to kind of call it out or put it in a public domain, they do disappear them. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I've done it quite a few times over the last 5 to 10 years. But yeah, these gatekeeper sites, it was worldshift.earth, they promoted the Global Deal for Nature, Agenda 2030, worldshift.org was another one. They were advocating the collective consciousness, the big consensus, global hive mind, new age global governments, and the Gaia religion, which dovetails into the global action plan of Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. But which is exactly what they're trying to do with COVID-19, right? But put simply, it's a draconian control and management system of the world's people, property and resources sold as environmentalism. We were talking about this, going all around the country doing it before we were locked down. Well, this is from the World Shift website. Get this. World Shift is a global movement, and it began in September 2009 by an emergency proposal from the Club of Budapest in response to global financial, economical and environmental crisis to shift the world to a sustainable one. Did you get that bit of word salad? Based on the transformation of awareness and behaviour at the individual level beyond national and ethnic barriers, in other words global governance, and cuts across barriers of politics and business leadership. Yet there's no left or right. This is just one template that's being implemented. They say it goes across civil sectors and media. It says we aim to create a better future. After my interview with 5G activist John Kitson, because John was on my show last week, and it just reminded me of this because John did an interview with me, and very shortly after that, and my article, which just preceded the interview, which was 5G debate hijacked by globalists, this website closed down. So yeah, but it says basically, the World Shift website, it says here, worldshift.earth. Go and have a look if you don't believe me. It says worldshift.earth, that's the website. The time has come for worldshift.earth to bow out gracefully. World Shift Earth was originally birthed out of the World Shift movement, a platform launched in 2010 and subsequently taken offline in 2012 due to lack of resources. Since when have globalists had a lack of resources? Doesn't make any sense. The World Shift movement relaunched as World Shift Earth in May 2019, but has become increasingly associated with another unrelated World Shift website that has different directives, objectives and associations. Maybe it's because when people put World Shift in, our article came up. Now this used to be a killer way of dealing with them. Google have now stopped a lot of this stuff, but I took on bailiff companies about 10 years ago. One of them was called what was it called? Jamie Waller. It was called, it'll come back to me in a minute. We're all a bit tired here. We've got the post-COVID blues. But yes, this bailiff company, I actually put on my website, don't pay them. They were acting illegally. They were actually taking people's property illegally. Their bailiffs were self-employed. And they wrote me a letter from a city lawyer, and they were trying to sue me. I took it to a barrister. We got a 40-page rebuttal done with a commercial affidavit, and the barrister said to me, you don't have to do all this, you know, you haven't libelled them. I said, I know, but it's going to cost them a lot of money to actually address this, isn't it? And he says, yeah, about 20 grand, because if they actually wanted to rebut it point by point, it would cost them a fortune. So what happened was this big city lawyer backed off, and my article stayed there until unfortunately the website went down because someone else was looking after it. But the point I'm trying to make here is that you can actually really do some serious damage to these globalists just by really writing an article and getting that article out there and then linking it to your website. But basically, yeah, it says further recent developments have also made it difficult for World Shift Earth to establish itself as the unique and independent platform it is. Doesn't make any sense, that, does it? If it's unique, then why would it be difficult to establish? There would be nothing like it, would there? Also, it says given that World Shift movement was launched over 10 years ago, World Shift Earth carries an old pre-December imprint and energy. I love all this new age crap. It's funny, isn't it? It spouts the same old crap as all the rest, though. However, it says the evolutionary call of conscious awakening continues to inspire individuals, communities, nations, the world, and even initiatives, and therefore it is wise to respond in such a way that supports an unfolding into the more than we each are. God, this is very clumsy word salad. But word salad-tastic, that could have come out of a globalist hive mind think tank. Wait a minute, newsflash, it did. And it says an entirely new energy, a new being is now preparing for birth as a visionary and inspirational initiative in service of love in capital letters. And this beautiful planet we call home, Earth. It says details will be announced shortly on social media and here. Thank you for being part of the worldshift.earth. Love worldshift.earth. Well, I can't wait. I can't wait for the new one. Can you? I bet there'll be nothing like it. Well, I think there might be, you know. But when you do the same thing over and over again, there is a problem calling it unique. It's a familiar template to anyone who has any knowledge about the UN, and thousands of NGOs are actually controlling the narrative. The interesting point here is that after I put out the article about the Club of Rome being behind this through the Club of Budapest, the website was taken down. And the involvement of Club of Rome founder Irving Laszlo was public, but it was only when I did an interview about how these template Global Action Plan websites are set up that it was taken down. And that was because of my interview with John Kitson, and then also this article, 5G Debate Hijacked by Globalists. So the reason I'm telling you all this is because you can bring this stuff down. It's not that difficult to do. And the thing about these template websites is they're all the same. They use Saul-Alinsky rules. The Saul-Alinsky rule they never use. Have a look at these 13 Saul-Alinsky rules for radicals. We've done many shows on Saul-Alinsky. But look up the 13 rules for radicals. And the one that they never use is don't do the same thing over and over again. They do the same thing over and over and over again. And Alinsky said a drag is a drag, never make it boring. And newsflash, news just in, yes they do. And they also never use humour. Humour is another thing they never use. So I thought that was sort of a bit of information-tastic kind of stuff really in our COVID blues show, Sandy.
Absolutely. No, that's a really good that's a really good result actually. Bring it down. I mean, I think that's brilliant. And call them out. You know, this is what we're beginning to do a bit more. Is calling. You know, whatever you see on the WEF website, which is a mine of information on what they intend to do with this pandemic, you know, and what the next stages are, and how they will bring in the new economic order, i.e. the Green New Deal. And it's interesting because I've got a quote here from the Laura Clark, who's the New Zealand High Commissioner. And she says, COVID-19 hasn't killed globalisation. Well, newsflash, that's obvious. But it has made the world a far more dangerous place and changed how we work and think internationally. It's a truly global crisis. Well, we know that. The UK has the on incoming COP26. We've got that's happening in I think it's next year, isn't it? The COP26, which was cancelled last year, and it says in partnership with Italy, it will continue to press for greater ambition around the world to reduce emissions, build resilience, and cooperate and support each other in a green recovery.
Oh, great! Interdependent-tastic, interconnectedness.
Absolutely.
This is great. Part of the word salad.
Yeah.
It's sustainable. It's interconnected. We've got consensus. We've got diversity, and we've got resilience.
Yeah. She's put it all in one sentence there, and you know, you think she must be an absolute. You know, either she's bought into it and she knows what she's doing, or she's been totally brainwashed into thinking this is a fantastic idea, which a lot of these politicians are. They don't know what they're doing.
No, they don't. They don't understand what's actually behind this thing. They are taking it all on face value. Those people in your local council, as we've been reporting for years on end, cannot help you. They have not got the coordinates to know what they're even talking about. I can say that because I've been to loads of these council meetings over the years. I've seen how they do it when they bring in the change agents with their Delphi technique. We've seen the citizens' assemblies. We're in a stage further than that now because this is the most audacious thing that's ever happened. We have been reporting on it for the last 2 months. Don't want to labour the point, but I think now it would be really interesting to see if anyone else can bring some of their websites down and start having a go, because it's not that difficult. The point I'm trying to make is it's actually quite easy. These people know when they've been rumbled, and I've rumbled them a lot over the years. That's how I cut my teeth in all this stuff, taking the council to court. JBL, that was the name of the bailiff company. JBW, that was it. No, JBL are the speakers, aren't they?
Yes.
Or as a friend of mine who worked at Molyneux used to say, "Oh, JBL, yeah, just bloody loud." Yeah, but the thing is though that you can do a lot of damage to these people who are actually damaging the public. So what I do is I call it balancing the books. In other words, they're causing us a loss. so that loss has to be balanced. It doesn't matter whether it's the police, whether it's the courts, whether it's the council, or whether it's any other public body or a private corporation. The books need to be balanced. If they cause you a tort, if they cause you damage, then that damage needs to be kind of balanced. You have to balance the books. It's a very important thing to do. Whether it's parking tickets or anything else, always balance the books. Now, the way you do that is up to you, but there are ways and means of doing everything. I never give people advice. I never give people legal advice, and I never expect anybody to do what I do. But what I would say is that what I've done has actually worked in a lot of cases. And what most people do is they say, is there a template that I can send off? No, there isn't. If you don't know how to do something, don't do it. End of.
Good, absolutely. Now, I just thought I'd have a little rant, I suppose, about the social distancing and the opening up of businesses, because I run a pub in Glastonbury, and of course we've been told we can now open on July the 4th, but there's a lot of regulations now. I've just realised that we've got to deal with all this and put all this in place before July the 4th, and apparently you have to create a one-way system, and there's no one allowed to at the bar to gather. Everything has to be table service, and contactless payments they're encouraging. I'm personally not going to do that, because some of my customers in this town, they don't even have a credit card. They just come in with their cash, and this whole thing of contact tracing, taking details at the bar. So if you go in to buy a drink, you have to give your name, address, telephone number and email address. Now this is absolute nonsense. This is guidelines, because they're data harvesting. They say, oh, we do it because to help the NHS. Well, no, what happens with that information? And the thing is, it's actually against the law. It's against the Data Protection Act, and it's against the GDPR. And it was called out by a barrister called Francis Hoare, and he said, taking the details is guidance, and actually it's against the law, so don't do it. You can ignore it. So I'm not going to be doing that. I will not take people's details, because it's data harvesting and it's against the law. What do you think about that?
Well, the boss of Marston's actually said that what they were going to do is give people pens and paper, and if they wanted to leave their name and address, they could, which is the best way of doing it, because it's not the law.
Well, I think my customers, we'd get some very funny names and addresses put down. You'd have Donald Duck, Disneyland, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's lots of people with funny names around here, isn't there?
Oh, yes.
I think there'd be loads of Shivas, wouldn't there? There'd be lots of Shivas.
There would, lots of Isises and Shivas and things.
Yeah. What about Lakshmi? Have you got any Lakshmis?
Oh, we've got loads of them. You can't move for Lakshmis.
Oh, I love Lakshmis. They've got loads of money, haven't they?
Yes, got lots of hands, anyway. We've also been told we can't have quiz nights. Well, I mean, I don't understand that one. What's wrong with having a quiz, Mark? What's wrong with that?
Well, I don't know. But the thing I would say is that if there's a quiz night, I usually leave. So maybe they're catching on. Maybe quiz nights aren't a good idea,
Well, but entertainment, apparently they're really worried about singers spitting whilst they're singing, and you're not allowed to shout in a pub, because that causes COVID-19 spreading, which is very, very bizarre. So
they're just testing the boundaries of public stupidity.
It is, absolutely.
It's a compliance
100%.
test, so don't comply to it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just daft, isn't it?
Yeah, it's totally daft. But what I'm sort of quite interested in is also in Ireland, it's much more draconian, much more. And I'm just wondering if it's because they are under EU guidelines, whereas we supposedly left the EU. But in Ireland, there's not even much choice. They have to they can't just serve drinks. They have to serve food with drinks, and that has to be at a cost of €9 or more. And each customer cannot leave the table unless they're going to the loo or leaving. And they can only spend 90 minutes in the premises, which I find I mean, bizarre. It's like fast food. I mean, it's ridiculous. On top of that, and this is to do with contact tracing, if you are sitting at a table and you've paid your bill and you leave, the bar staff cannot get that table occupied for 15 minutes after you've left. They have to sanitize it, but there's a 15-minute rule, and that is because that's how long it takes for the contact tracing on the mobile phones of the people that had been sitting at that table before to clear before it actually is contaminated by another group of people sitting down. And this is what we're looking at. It's all about contact tracing, data harvesting, and just surveillance, really, of who's going where, who's been where, and what's going on. And it's, to have this 15-minute rule is purely to help with the contact tracing.
And yeah, Google and Apple have now taken it over after the government one failed. Now this is quite interesting because they were meant to have 25,000 contact tracers that they were paying. That fell on its arse basically, and it didn't work. And they were all told to, just keep taking the money and phoning in and we'll be ready. And of course, it's all dying now. So even the manipulated figures are going right down. So they can't keep it going unless, of course, and we know what's going to happen, there's going to be a second wave. And that's the interesting thing about this now, because it is starting to fall apart. Most of these things that they do fall apart. Who's they? Well, someone asked in chat actually. Well, what happened was the World Health Organization declared a pandemic when Bill Gates had donated another 50 million, I think. And it's that simple. When you look at the interested parties here, they include our own government. Most of these people have been bought off, but when you see our so-called government, they're just hostages. Boris Johnson and those other two idiots, whoever they may be at the particular time, are just hostages. They are under global governance. They are being instructed, and they don't know what they're doing. It's clear they don't know what they're doing. They're trying to, like people like Matt Hancock, he tries to come across as authoritative, but he's just an idiot. They don't know what they're talking about. These people do, though, have their noses in the trough. Dominic Cummings, look at the rest of them. Well, go to America and look at Fauci and all these people. Basically, these are bought off, and it's incredible, isn't it, that Bill Gates can actually take over the world. This computer geek who's just a liar, who had no talent, who can't do anything, who's a chancer, who doesn't know anything about medicine, is now vaccinating the world. And he has been found out. There are people calling him out for what he's done in Africa. There was a lady who's got a YouTube channel. She's very good. I can't remember her name at the moment, but I was going to try and get in touch with her because she really laid it on the BBC, because the diversity asset of the BBC was trying to say, oh, but you're denying them their human rights by not letting them have abortions. And she said, no, it's not like that. If you actually look what they want, the birth control is right down on the list and vaccination's nowhere to be seen. So these aren't human rights. These are being implemented against the wishes of the consensus. And she actually called it out quite cleverly. But the point is that the UK government are just under control. We are under global governance now. We don't have a government anymore. So I think people should get used to that, because when you've got the multi-agency complicity of the World Economic Forum, you've got the World Health Organization, Bill and Melinda Gates, you've got over here Imperial College, who shouldn't be running anything because of the past track record. And if you look at the money that Bill Gates has given them, and the hygiene and tropical medicines the Institute of Hygiene and Tropical Medicines, Chris Whitty got a massive grant from them. That's all tied into Imperial College. In America, you have the Johns Hopkins University. All these are players in rolling this out. And yes, they use academics, because academics will do what they're told. They will put out the consensus, which has nothing to do with the reality. So what you've got here is something that's been manufactured really in a corporate way, and it's corporate global governance. It's what we've been talking about for years. There's nothing even complicated about it. All you're talking about is a global mafia, and that's really all you can say about it. Over to you, Sandy.
Well, I'm going to talk about what could happen with the next wave, because there's been a lot of talk about the zoonotic virus, the COVID-19 being a zoonotic disease which crosses from animals to humans. And there's a reason why they keep banging on about this on the United Nations website. And basically, it's to do with how will they progress this? How will they progress this virus? Because they've already told us there's going to be a second wave, maybe a third wave. This is going to go on and on and on. You know, nothing will ever go back to normal. We know that. And in my view, they will, if we start cottoning on to everything they're doing and calling them out, they could well do something like they did with, it didn't work with climate change, and wham, we've suddenly got this, and it's progressed it very, very quickly, hasn't it, Mark? Well, I've been looking and thinking, well, what could they do next? And the answer for me was on the on the United Nations website, and they state COVID-19 is a zoonotic disease, meaning that it jumps between animals and people, and it is therefore closely connected to the lands both inhabit. Human and economic activity is eroding wild spaces, forests and other important ecosystems, bringing us closer to reservoir hosts, animals and plants that can harbour diseases. And basically what they're saying, to progress the rewilding and killing two birds with one stone, bringing veganism in, because that Jane Goodall, the primatologist, has been banging on about people shouldn't be eating meat because it's dangerous, because there could be.
Well, she's been given a word
in.
salad, hasn't she? I mean, I called her out the other week, I think, on the RBN show, because yes, they get these people who are connected to wildlife. It's a bit like Actor, they use David Attenborough. He does voiceovers for the BBC. He knows nothing about wildlife. He knew nothing about the walruses falling off the cliffs because he said it was climate change. Well, he'd actually made a documentary previously and said that they fall off the cliffs when they get too crowded, and then they panic and fall off, which is obviously what happens, right? So he's an absolute sellout, but maybe he's just an idiot. Maybe these people are that stupid. They do work, well, he does work for the BBC, but these people who make documentaries about animals, what do they know about anything?
They don't, well, Attenborough, clearly he just reads the script, and he's also paid. I mean, he's involved with the World Bank. He's totally with the globalists. He's up to his eyes in it, and he's paid off. He's bought and paid for. It's awful. Anyway, they say COVID-19 underscores the relationship between human health and nature and reveals a fundamental problem. Humans have limited needs, but the planet has limited capacity to satisfy them. Often land degradation is caused by unsustainable human consumption and needs. But then they go on, and it ends up with really the interaction of humans or livestock with wildlife exposes them to the risk of spillover of potential pathogens. For many zoonoses, that's the plural of zoonotic diseases, livestock serve as an epidemiological bridge between wildlife and human infections. So at the moment, people, they're causing chaos now with all the riots in London. People are fleeing to the countryside. Several friends of mine have actually left London this week because it's too awful at the moment. And what would happen then if they caused chaos in the countryside? It's obvious if they keep going on and on about this zoonotic diseases. In my view, it could well be something that happens in the countryside to force everybody into the smart cities and cause yet another scare and to further this agenda. I really feel that there's something really bizarre going on, and you can find all this if you go onto the United Nations website and just type into the search engine zoonotic diseases, because it's been in the mainstream media a lot recently, and the minute you hear those buzzwords, they're cooking up something and actually sowing the seeds in your mind of what is going to come along, and that's the way they work, isn't it, Mark?
Well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, they just create the problem, and the problem is not a real problem. So if there's no real problem, then create one. That's all you have to do. That's what this COVID-19 thing. I mean, the thing about this to me is the audacity of it. Yes, that's part of what the globalism thing is all about. They're audacious. They have a lot of nerve. That's the whole point. Yes, they go for things that are beyond what the public would think that they would do. They'd never do that. Well, they just did it simple, right? It's dead simple. But when you look at the structure of this, which is what we put over all the time, which is why I get a bit burned out talking about it, because I'm talking about it every day now. lots of different angles on it, but it's basically the same template, which is why I keep reiterating the same thing, because they're doing the same thing. Just get used to it, look at the template and look at the word salad and then decode it, and then you can do something to take it apart. Because a lot of this stuff, it's almost like fake Kabbalah. I'm going to get into that in the next few weeks, because I've been studying that for a very long time, and people who buy into that Kabbalistic kind of thinking, they buy into so-called magical thinking. And the next thing is that they're hooked on all these stupid conspiracy theories because they think there's a great mystery. In this case, there's no mystery. It's dead simple. It's run out on a corporate structure by useful idiots, people who are trained into it, and it's not very intelligent. In fact, it's not intelligent at all, in my opinion.
Well, it isn't. And the thing is that we used to have proper science, real science, and these were scientists that actually were working for the common good of everyone. Scientists and engineers, that was proper science years ago. And today we have got something very different. It's serving an agenda. It isn't true. The science is wrong, as David Bellamy said. The science is wrong, and that's why he left the BBC. Because what we're dealing with now is unscrupulous people putting out fake science, and it is fake science. There is no proof, and even on the United Nations website it says that there is still, that there's no direct proof that COVID-19 came from bats or any wet market. They don't know that. They clearly state that, but then they go on to say, oh, but it's a zoonotic disease. Well, they don't know that. They've already stated on their website that they don't know the origin. So how can they then say it came from a bat?
Well, it changes with the agenda, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So once you want something to go in a different direction, you make your plan fit the action. It's very, very simple. All that you have to do then is go, oh yes, of course, because it originated in animals. Now it's going to cross from animals to humans. We've got to get all the humans out the countryside. You can't be going into fields where there's cows and sheep, and they're going to have to close all the farms down. Everyone's going to be infected. It's so bloody obvious. And when you look back what they've done with mad cow disease and all that.
It's the same bloke,
it's the same,
isn't it?
Yeah, Neil Ferguson. They use him because he gets it wrong to the extent that it helps them. They culled all the cattle. These are very, very simple things to work out, aren't they? So we're doing that every day. Join us on RBN, Republic Broadcasting Network, and you can actually phone in there. And we have a lot of interesting calls, and you get a different perspective. So it's Monday to Friday. Sandy joins me on Wednesday and Friday. Might even be on tomorrow, because we're broadcasting now from the southwest. And what I can tell you is that the weather around here has been really dismal today. It's been sort of sunny and rainy. When I was in Kent, it was fantastic. So we're getting into the dark side of COVID now, aren't we? It's the dark side of COVID.
Because we've had the COVID blues, Mark. It has been a bit dreary today, very dreary, and it's not like us to be like that. And I wouldn't recommend anybody dwells on the dark side too much, because I think we have to remain optimistic. We're pushing all the information out. They are being called out, and I believe that there's a few high court cases that are going on about the lockdown, and I'm following that. I wouldn't want to hang too much on it, but if we can get something going where it is called out and people begin to see that we've been conned, and we've been conned on a huge scale, maybe things. And I'm noticing a big change in people's perception of this thing. People that I didn't think would actually turn around are turning around, and I'm sure all of you listening have got people around them who are finally coming around to seeing the deception that we're living under.
Yes, and during this week, we haven't got time to go into it tonight, I'm going to be looking at Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Got a good story on that, because they were, believe it or not, part of sustainable development. Would you believe it?
I would believe it, actually.
Yes. In fact, one of the people who was allegedly trafficked was trafficked through this project of theirs, which was all to do with sustainable development. More on that in the week, and we'll be back tomorrow on RBN, Monday to Friday. Do help me on Patreon if you can. I know it's a globalist platform, but we'll find a better way of doing it one day. And PayPal. And I'll be back tomorrow, 6 p.m, all through the week actually, Monday to Friday. Sandy's going to join me. We've got great guests, got really, really good people who know what they're talking about, who know their stuff. We're not going through the motions here, getting the infotainment special guests on that everyone else has. We're getting people to you who have specialised information and have some kind of real background in what they're talking about. And we've been putting a lot of those sort of shows out on RBN. And I'm pretty pleased with the output, even though we're doing it every day. So that's it for tonight. Thanks to everyone